The following program is being brought to you on the World Talk Radio Network. For more information about our network and to check out additional show hosts and topics of interest, please visit worldtalkradio.com. The World Talk Radio Network, where the world comes to talk. The views and ideas expressed on the following program are strictly those of the host or guests and do not necessarily reflect the views and ideas held by the World Talk Radio Network, its staff, and management.
It's time to hear from those who have faced adversity and accomplished greatness. Welcome to Breaking the Limits with host Lyca Shawn. Your past does not dictate your future. This program will inspire and motivate you. Now here's your host, Lyca Shawn.
Welcome to Breaking the Limits. If you have heard the term turnabout is fair play, then that's pretty much what tonight's show is about. My guest from last week, the episode number 7, The Healing Power of Art and Dreams, is currently on the show, and she said, hey, why don't I interview you? So, Carol Edson, the art director of Blackbird Studios and Zodiac Poetry Mask Theater, is online, and she is going to be interviewing me, Lyca Shawn, the host of the show. So, Carol, I'm going to turn it over to you now.
Okay. Hi from Seattle again.
Hello.
Yes. Turnabout is fair play.
Mm-hmm.
Well, like I was just reading one of your articles on self-esteem, and it was about the power of story, so I thought it'd be fun to start there and have you tell us a little bit of a story about how you came to be interested in writing.
So, turnabout's fair play is right, because I always start my shows out by asking the guest, well, what's your story? How did you get where you are? So, now, for those that don't know, you, Carol Edson, are also my mom. So you know, of course, my life story, but I'm going to answer the questions as if you don't, so that
that's right.
The audience doesn't.
You're my talent. I'm just going to interview.
Yes, I'm your talent today. So basically, well, I grew up in northern Maine, in the rugged backwoods right on the Canadian border, and ever since I can remember, I mean, from the earliest stage on, I was always drawing and writing. I remember writing all kinds of strange little stories about everything from birds and bugs to professors and characters that I created. So I've kind of done that, and I've journaled just all my life. It was kind of my escape from really the isolation of where I was growing up. And as you know, we were in a sort of a cult scenario when we were in backwoods Maine, dominated by a Czech immigrant who believed he was touched by the hand of God, and basically raised me and my sister and everybody else's children that were in the group, a bunch of single moms and their kids, in a way that was extremely isolated from the rest of the world. So my imagination was really my escape portal, and so was my writing. So that's how it all started.
And somewhere I have a note here about childhood journal keeping and how that helped you keep your sense of a personal world that was just yours.
Well, we really weren't allowed to have identities. I mean, it was a situation with a domineering patriarchal scenario where, you know, the children and the women in the group, we were all really just extensions there to, you know, serve the greater purpose, which was his purpose, and that thereby, you know, we were not supposed to have any wants, needs, or personality of your own. So writing was my own secret escape into a world where I could express myself without getting punished for it.
You could have a personal self that was nobody else's business.
Yeah, I mean, you weren't supposed to express personality in the way we were raised at the time. So, as you recall,
think all writers develop that quiet place that's just their secret thoughts. In order,
I don't know if it's quiet. There's a lot of characters and a lot of stuff going on in there. I don't call it quiet.
A lot going on, right?
Yeah,
little movies. But it is...
It's a fantasy world. It's a whole escape.
Yes, and yet it has power.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. And so you wrote quite a few stories, and then at one point sent some off bravely to New York.
Yeah, actually, I started out, I decided I wanted to write children's books eventually, and I did a bunch of research on, how you would actually get those published, and I actually did submissions I did a bunch of different manuscripts along with illustrations, and I submitted them to a number of publishing houses, and to my surprise, I actually got contacted by an editor in New York, and ended up flying out there and visiting with her. And though ultimately they didn't publish it, as you know, that's a rough game. The whole publishing industry is pretty tough to break into. It was still extremely encouraging because, you go through a slew of rejection letters. I mean, you have to steel yourself to rejection in the publishing industry. There's all these stories about Stephen King and everybody else that ever ends up a famous author all have plastered rejection letters across their wall.
Right.
So
the wallpaper.
So
the
it was very
wallpaper.
encouraging. Yeah, it was a lot of fun and very encouraging that she liked it so much. So that was kind of a stepping stone in going, wow, maybe I could really do something with this.
Yes, going to New York from the woods in Maine.
Yeah, that was a shocker, huh?
Yeah, that must have been a taste of the big world.
No, it was different. The thing I realized when I stepped out there was that no matter what you did, you couldn't stand out. So it's kind of like
New
a
York,
bizarre
right.
form of anonymity to go from where anybody did anything in a little tiny town, whereas you go to New York City and you could walk down the street with a refrigerator on your head and people wouldn't blink. I mean,
Very true. So then you got interested in the bigger world and decided to leave for Seattle. Now tell us a little bit about that adventure.
Well, that was, later on in the game. I just couldn't take it anymore, and I busted out of there. And as you know, my sister had gone to college in Washington State, and I went and I flew out there, and I had a place to crash, but I basically ended up, with nothing but my typewriter strapped on my back and a little bag of clothes and a few dollars in my pocket, and that was it. And no job, no nothing. So I remember missing a plane running. It was in O'Hare Airport where the connection flight was, and I felt like a complete alien. I didn't know how to do much of anything, really. I mean, not even use a payphone. So we really weren't, exposed to the worldly world at all in the way we were raised much. So it was kind of scary for me.
Being an immigrant, almost.
Yeah, basically
coming into
I
a new
felt like
country.
an alien. I didn't feel like I had any place where I was going, but I ended up when I got there, I got really, really ill. I had bronchitis or some kind of walking pneumonia, so I was pretty sick for a while. And then I finally landed a job. My sister had a friend. I didn't have really a skill set, so I was looking for anything I could get. And my sister had a friend who was a detailer, which is on an auto detailer, cleaning cars, washing cars on the car dealership lots, doing undercoats and little minor repairs. And he ended up getting me a job doing the same thing. And I remember they didn't have a uniform yet for me. And he was this really tall, like 6'4" guy, and his name was Dick. And he had a spare uniform, so I ended up going around in these coveralls with a name tag that said Dick on it. It rolled up to the elbows with the sleeves, because obviously it didn't really fit right, and cinched at the waist with a belt, and running around doing auto detailing. That was my first job
Like a
out
comic
there.
character, almost.
Yeah, that was different, washing the
But then
cars.
you stepped out of that, didn't you? Quite quickly.
The salesman I was making barely any money at all, and barely breaking even, and getting really tired of working myself to death. And the salesman would go by making all his money on the cars, and I decided, maybe I could try that. And I went to the main office guy, and I said, I want to try selling cars. And he laughed at me. So
there you were, in your funny uniform.
Well, that just made me mad. So I went to Goodwill and bought a suit for like $5, and then on lunch I changed into my suit and went next door and got hired by the competition, and came back and said, I'm going to quit now. I'm going to go sell cars for the competition. And he looked me up and down and said, well, if you're underhanded enough to do that, you can work for me at a bigger rate. And I was my jaw dropped. It was a commission job. But I actually ended up selling like 11 cars my first month, and of course that was more money than I'd ever seen. So I guess I was good at it. But it was a bizarre learning experience, because they did it with a liner closer arrangement where I was the innocent person showing the cars, and then the hard hitter would come in and do the closers. But all the stories are just crazy true, unfortunately, about some of those places. I mean, my trainer would literally say, you got to slit the customer's throat, hang him up by the ankles, and take the change out of his pocket. That stuck in my head, and I put it in my book I wrote later because that was just so atrocious.
That's
and I actually,
bad guy.
Yeah, well, I sold my very first car to this young girl. Her father and her came in, and I was happy with it. She seemed happy with the car, and they came in later, and suddenly the guy next to me said, "Oh, trouble, trouble." And I'm like, "What are you talking about, trouble, trouble? They're coming in to get an oil change or something." And then he said, they told me there was a cracked block in the car, and they could tell. And then if I said anything, I was fired. So then I quit.
There you hear it, right? That's the story right there, isn't it?
That was it. That was just nasty. So
off you went, and then you wind up in Seattle during the grunge movie making era. You must tell us the story of how you started working there.
I did a stint modeling and doing acting. I decided I wanted to be an actress. There was a big movement at the time because it was cheap to film make in Seattle. That was the days when they did Sleepless in Seattle and Singles and all of those movies. And so I actually ended up with a lot of bit parts in a lot of movies and kind of rubbed elbows with a few big names, you know.
And this is in your book too. We'll get to that later.
Yeah. I played like 3 different anonymous type of parts in Singles, which was kind of fun. You know, met Kara Sedgwick and a few others, and she was really kind of nice. And now she's got this famous series out there, you know, The Closer.
Oh yes, a lot.
Yeah. But it was very interesting. It was an interesting bunch of people, but everybody was looking for that quick fix. You know, the director just blinks at you the right way, and it was kind of a strange, bizarre kind of high. It was sort of like gambling. You're always quick break, and a very unstable crew. And at that time in my life, everything was, you know, external validation in the state of mind I was in, and it was very, very hard to, you know, find any kind of sense of peace when everything was dependent on you. You never even knew what. It was a crazy upside down world. Could be your look, could be somebody had a friend who was, you know, the friend of the director. Could be anything. I was told everything from you're too tall, you're too skinny, you're too short, you're too, you know, in the modeling, and then I was hired for a job and the friend had a director and I didn't get that job, and it's just nuts. It's crazy.
Nothing for self-esteem in this story.
Oh my gosh, no. And then the other thing too is I too had the, you know, starry-eyed belief that these stars, these famous people must have a secret to life, you know, something secret that made them work and made them tick. And when I met a few of them, I was so disappointed that they were just regular people.
Gee.
You know, that the glitter fell aside. And I was like, they didn't have a secret. They were just people. Yeah. And it was so disappointing, you know, and I'm sure they have to deal with that because they're put up on these pedestals as these shining examples of perfection, and then they fall to the ground as real people, you know, especially you meet them in person. It's like, that's Kevin Bacon?
Oh, yeah. And all of that.
That's Matt Dillon? Oh, okay.
And how did you get from your job at the bowling alley into Singles movie?
No. I was going through a number of casting companies. One of the movies happened to get filmed where I was bartending, and
then what a coincidence!
That was kind of a weird coincidence, but that was just one of the films I was in. I was in a bunch of movies with odd bits and pieces. Like there was one called Past Midnight with Rutger Hauer. I remember watching him fill this scene where he was staggering through fake rain with a bloody knife in his hand, and it was freezing cold out. And they dressed us all up as Hicks, you know, and I had these, and it's funny because I felt right back at home because they had these big plaid Maine shirts and big boots, and so walking by being an extra playing a Hick, which is, well, look at me, I'm playing myself back in Maine, you know. So, and it was interesting. And weird. It was a very bizarre world.
It was an interesting time in Seattle too, because of all the movie making and the excitement around having film crews in town. I think it kind of, you know, it sort of had a romantic aura to it, you know. Mm-hmm. Even though, as you point out, it's all complete madness. We still have a lot of movie making going on here. Especially indie films. A lot of indie films here.
Now, we might get interrupted by the commercial break because it looks like they've knocked offline. Usually they give me a ping, but I can't seem to see them.
We're coming up on it, but I don't hear the music yet.
Yeah, okay, you're coming up on it. We'll come back in a minute.
See you later.
Listen.
Listen. The world is talking. The World Talk Radio Variety Channel.
Your past does not dictate your future. Learn where this powerful message came from by picking up a copy of the inspirational book, Firewalker, written by author, speaker, and talk show host Lyca Shawn. Firewalker chronicles Lyca's experiences raised in the deep woods of Maine by a Czech immigrant who claimed to be touched by the hand of God, and her journey to overcoming the fear and self-doubt that was thrust upon her for years. Pick up your copy of Firewalker now at breakingthelimits.com/Firewalker. That's breakingthelimits.com/Firewalker. Champions are born and losers are made. This is a powerful statement made by one of the world's top motivational speakers, John D. Lemmy. Clinically diagnosed as a stutterer at a young age, he was told he would never speak fluently, and yet now he is a world-renowned motivational speaker. Get the resources now you need in order to stay on top of your game. John D. Lemmy is giving away for free 7 success motivational teachings. Go to www.selfempowermentsystems.com. That's www.selfempowermentsystems.com.
Wake up with a unique daily show covering the world of sports with a new perspective. Get Off the Bench with Mitchell John will bring you the current sports news and events happening now, not later like the others. Your first look at sports will feature the news and views from professional, college, and high school sports. Tune in with Mitchell John for a can't-miss program every weekday. Catch Get Off the Bench with Mitchell John weekday mornings at 6 a.m. Pacific Time, 9 a.m. Eastern Time on the World Talk Radio Variety Channel. Are you wondering how to jumpstart your life while bringing more excitement and joy into every moment? Join the Goddess Gals, the mother-daughter dynamic duo, Cynthia Bryan and Heather Brittany, each week on radio's favorite power hour, Star Style. Be the star you are. You'll hear from the experts and authors that inspire and motivate you to be your greatest unique self. Plus, in Tea for Two, a mother-daughter brew, Cynthia and Heather tackle the topics and tips that make a difference. Listen every Thursday at 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern on World Talk Radio, Studio A. You're listening to the World Talk Radio Variety Channel.
You are listening to Breaking the Limits. Your past does not dictate your future with Lyca Shawn. What would you do if you could overcome any obstacle in your life? Let's get back to today's exciting discussion. Here's Lyca Shawn.
Hey, welcome back to Breaking the Limits. And in this show, I am the one being interviewed. So Carol Edson is doing the interviewing. So back to your questions, Carol.
All right. Well, now, how do we get from being a bowling alley barista who's extraing in movies to a whole new career in computer science?
Well, that was it wasn't just a snap thing. I did a lot of jobs. I did a lot of jobs also putting myself through school, but originally I actually was going into graphic design. I just decided I was working bartending, just making a living, and there was this one lady, a sweet lady, who worked in this bowling alley bar, but she had been there since she was 15, and she was like 53 or so. And I just got this horrible feeling of I would rather do anything than be in a place like that all my life. And I would do anything not to tread water, and it just snapped me into this state of I am doing something. I don't know exactly what I want to do yet, but I'm going to school. I'll find a way to put myself through school. So I went and I applied to Shoreline Community College, where they had, and I started out majoring in graphic design just because I loved graphic arts and just artistic in general, and taking general courses. And as I was getting closer to working through my major there, I saw people coming back who had graduated in graphic design out after and trying to get some other certifications under their belt because they were ending up in doing paste-up work for Safeway, and nothing like what I would want to do.
Oh, yeah.
It's also a hard industry to break into. And I found out from someone about a technical college that had a waiting list but that you had like 97% placement in an excellent career afterwards. And I had already been on computers because the graphics design department, and they used Macs at the time, I was doing graphic design work on the computers, and I realized that I had a knack for it.
That came in later handy too, huh?
And that's when I thought, hey, this is something worth looking into. And when I realized I enjoyed it, and it was also a challenge, and it was also an alternative career for women, and I always kind of liked to do stuff like that, sort of a super overachiever type. And there was actually some funds available for me to go to college taking computer science because of that. So I went ahead and got on the waiting list and continued to take some courses while I waited and put myself through school, working a variety of odd jobs, including caretaking and bartending and various bits and pieces here and there until I got into the other school for it.
Well, that's a big step into a career.
Yeah, and then it was pretty interesting when I first left my job at the bowling alley, when I was like, I got some funds so that I could actually leave that job and devote more time to studying, and I was doing some caretaking instead. I had this one customer that tormented me and the rest of the waitresses just mercilessly the whole time. He was an ex-cop, and he was really obnoxious, and there was a cop bowling league that would come in, and they were great guys, and they'd always tip well, but this guy was an ex-cop, and he was just really obnoxious, and he was always like, making fun of the waitresses and giving us all kinds of grief and, hey, bar wench, come give me a drink. So he didn't realize I was no longer working there. I came in to say goodbye to my buddies, and he said, he pulled his bar wench, give me something to drink. I used to not put alcohol in his drinks to piss him off, stuff like that, because when he was really mean to us, but he really made our life hell. So I remember coming back in, and he was telling me to get him a drink, and I'm like, I don't think so. I started walking away, and he grabbed me and pinned my arms, and I told him to let go, and he wouldn't. So I told him I would. Well, I can't really say on the air what I said.
Okay.
And so it's in the book. Let's put it that way. And he wouldn't let go, so I ended up punching him in the gut, and he doubled over.
Oh my God!
And the cook poked his head out of the kitchen and said, "Oh, I think I'm in love." And I walked out, and that was like the best feeling ever. It's like one of those moments from a movie almost.
I see.
Yeah, and I walked out.
You
let
weren't
go
going
of me
back
and
to
let me
being
go.
that girl anymore.
It was just one of these defining moments.
Yes.
You just harassed mercilessly, and then you just I don't think so.
Totally different person emerges.
So anyway, then I went to school, and I, ended up with computer science, associate's degree in computer science. For the next 2 years, I was working on that, and we were being recruited straight out of school. Microsoft would come in, and other companies would come in, and it was really hot and popping. That was an awesome time to be in high tech. And from there, I just stepped into a high tech career, and my goal was to work for AT&T, and within 3 weeks, I worked for AT&T.
Oh my gosh! What another jump that was.
Well, the industry's kind of volatile. I mean, it's like every 2 years, like clockwork, there would be a merger, a buyout, a sale. But I was in a really golden position at the time because we were really sought after, and we would have bidding wars on us. I mean, I would have people calling my desk and offering me jobs I'd never even talked to before at work.
Oh my!
So it was great.
That
was really great.
Change of pace.
And most people didn't know what we did, so we were sort of, that was also nice. It's like your boss.
Like being a doctor that has a specialty.
Sort of. It was the golden era for high tech. And of course, later the tech crash took some of the glamour off. But that was a lot of fun, very interesting, challenging because there were very few women in the field at all. But I've never had a problem with being in that environment. I was kind of, enjoyed a challenge. So.
Well, that comes around later too in your life. So now we get to a very interesting event, which is you're off across the country. You go to Phoenix. You go to Georgia. You're in Atlanta, where you are now, and somewhere along the way, a firewalk happens. Now we want to know all about that. Not something we ordinary folk usually do.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm glad you do that. Anyway, basically, I've always been immersing myself in self-development, and I have a lot of favorite authors. And Tony Robbins was one of the people I was really interested in at the time, and he's done a lot of incredible work with people. And one of the things he does to kind of blow your mind, one of his events is a firewalk. And I had
Tony
a friend
Robbins
take me who had done a firewalk, take me to an event. And because I really didn't, you don't really walk on fire. I didn't know if that was all bogus or what it was. But I actually did walk on, red-hot burning coals and didn't burn my feet. And that's a mind blower, and that's why he uses it, because it loosens your mind to realize what else am I capable of if I can, defy the laws of physics through sheer willpower, basically. And there's all kinds of theories about why people can do it. Oh, well, there's a layer of sweat. It's like, have you ever tried to roast a potato in a coal fire like we did when we were kids? I don't think so. So it was a pretty transcending experience. And
wonderful.
I had been writing, all my life, and I'd always had a feeling that I had a book in me. I always knew I did, and I always wanted to kind of what I call make meaning out of the madness that was my life and make something positive out of all I'd been through instead of just being someone that had a rough childhood. So after I did that, I, in earnest, decided to buckle down and actually write that book, and I titled it Firewalker.
Oh, exciting. How about reading some of that for us?
Yeah, I'll read the intro, which is a description of the actual firewalk, and hopefully we won't get knocked off in the middle. If we are, I'll just pick it up after the next break.
Okay.
This is chapter 1. It's titled The Firewalk, and I'm going to start off with that. It goes, think all things possible, and they become so. Only in the barren earth of disbelief does our life lay fallow. And that's something I came up with. Red sparks circled their way up towards the night sky, dancing an odd tempo to the music. Then the clapping began, at first slowly in rhythm, then faster and faster. The air, fraught with emotion, felt oddly alive. Wheelbarrows of glowing coals were pushed from the fire pits. Crew members in black T-shirts carefully moved through the crowd, shoveling the hot embers onto the ground in long rows. The heat pressed upward, and the smell of wood smoke filled the air. I found myself quickly at the front of the line, nothing but an overwhelming sense of strength flooding through my mind. The red coals spread out in front of me, vibrant in the darkness. I could feel their heat on my face. I stood, feet firmly planted on the ground, and brought my fist down to meet my open palm. I had practiced this move, imagining walls falling before me, oceans parting, and all the power of existence drawing into me in that one moment. A lightness of being filled me, as if I could float over the very earth itself. Cool moss, I chanted the mantra alive as I stepped forward with long, purposeful strides, eyes skyward. My feet hit the coals, and I felt as if I were walking on a pathway of crushed velvet. It pressed softly up under my feet, barely warm to the touch. By the time I reached the end, it had happened all too quickly. At that moment, I became all that existed, enveloped by the light of the firewalk. The night sky bore silent witness to the stirring of my spirit. Firewalker, the word lingered in my mind. Mine and not mine. Every door lay unhinged, and every path lay open. All that had ever held me back now seemed a dim shadow in a distant land. So that's my first excerpt in the book, and I also end the book with that, come full circle. That was the actual description of the experience of doing the firewalk itself.
Talk about the power of story.
Yeah, and going through writing the whole book, which is a autobiography of growing up through that whole period of my life, and then later on right up to the firewalk, really, is a process I went through, a catharsis, to try to work through the emotional stresses and, everything I'd been through. But I started out writing it in third person, and for those that aren't authors, that means that I'm writing it as if I'm talking about somebody else, not as if I'm talking about I.
Right.
So, when I went through the process of finding an editor and an agent, and the editor had me rewrite the whole book in first person. He said, you've pulled yourself too far away from it, and it was actually extremely difficult to do that, because when you do that, you bring yourself right back into those shoes, and there's a lot of traumatic stuff I went through, which I relate as, working through that.
Well, yes, and that's what gives the story its power, is the experiencing with you of the
agent. And it made the book 1,000 times better, and I wrote it over a period of 3 years, because I was, doing a full-time career and just working through it, not really sure what I was molding that clay into, but it just was a driven and a drive, a need. I had to do it. It was something I just had to do. I can't really explain. I just knew that I had to write that book, and I was very surprised by some of the responses I got. It was picked up by a small publishing house that just did 12 books, and it's out there on Amazon and .com and Barnes & Noble. It's called Firewalker. And
right. we'll get a link at the end of the show so people can find that.
Sure. Basically, I had done a number of talks as well around it and I was surprised at the responses I got from people who had been through a number of traumatic stresses, saying that it needed to be talked about, and how people that had been through the type of environment I grew up in, which was a cult environment with mind control factors, were always afraid to speak, and that it was very important that someone talk that way about it.
To be witnessed in your story.
Yeah.
To be reflected. We must be coming up on a break, but this has been...
Yep.
Yes, here we go. We'll be back shortly.
Okay.
The World Talk Radio Variety Channel, where the world comes to talk.
Your past does not dictate your future. Learn where this powerful message came from by picking up a copy of the inspirational book, Firewalker, written by author, speaker, and talk show host Lyca Shawn. Firewalker chronicles Lyca's experiences raised in the deep woods of Maine by a Czech immigrant who claimed to be touched by the hand of God, and her journey to overcoming the fear and self-doubt that was thrust upon her for years. Pick up your copy of Firewalker now at breakingthelimits.com/Firewalker. That's breakingthelimits.com/Firewalker. Champions are born and losers are made. This is a powerful statement made by one of the world's top motivational speakers, John D. Lemmy. Clinically diagnosed as a stutterer at a young age, he was told he would never speak fluently, and yet now he is a world-renowned motivational speaker. Get the resources now you need in order to stay on top of your game. John D. Lemmy is giving away for free 7 success motivational teachings. Go to www.selfempowermentsystems.com. That's www.selfempowermentsystems.com.
It's time for metaphysics to come out of the closet. Join host Kathy Kimura each week for Speaking Metaphysically. This program is designed to open the door to the world of the metaphysical. You'll hear from Kathy and her guests, including psychics, healers, shamans, and philosophers. You'll also hear from channels, angels, and more. Each week is sure to be informative and enlightening. Speaking Metaphysically with Kathy Kimura, Tuesdays at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, 11 a.m. Pacific Time on the World Talk Radio Variety Channel.
The World Talk Radio Variety Channel.
You are listening to Breaking the Limits. Your past does not dictate your future with Lyca Shawn. What would you do if you could overcome any obstacle in your life? Let's get back to today's exciting discussion. Here's Lyca Shawn.
Hey, welcome back to Breaking the Limits, where I, Lyca Shawn, am being interviewed by Carol Blackbird Edson. Back to you, Carol.
Yes, well, I'm just looking at the website, Breaking the Limits, and I see over in one corner of the red card with your picture a fabulous character, a woman with flaming wings, and under it says Firewalker Enterprises.
That's my logo. Well, I created Firewalker Enterprises as part of the venture around the book, and it's really an effort to expand beyond just having written a book into a lot of creative efforts, and which I am still working towards now. I'm always growing it. I've created a blog, and you can get to it. The easiest way to get to it is go to lycashawn.com, lycashan.com.
Mm-hmm.
That's my main blog. The breakingthelimits.com is for this show, of course. So that I have a few different sites that is dedicated to this show.
And both have lots of interesting links to articles and hosts.
Well, the articles, the lycashawn.com mostly has the links for the article. It's a blog where I've posted many original articles that I've written and then shared some interesting ones. Of course, I give the credit to the author for those.
Okay. There's lots of interesting articles on that, lycashawn.com.
As well, and that is it's also known as highselfesteem.com, but we'll just go with lycashawn.com. You can get to it a few different ways, And on there, it's around raising your self-esteem to raise the world is one of the main page titles, and it's also all around the theme that this whole show is around, which is your past does not dictate your future, which is really a core theme of my life, because if it did, I would not be here now.
Right. Well, we see how you've transformed over the years from the past into something completely different. And on the right here of the LycaShawn.com is a list of wonderful topics and also archives, all kinds of interesting material for people interested, especially in the self-esteem aspect, but in many other things, health, self-confidence, motivation, personal power.
It's all tied together around who you are at a core belief, your core belief structure.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have topics: anger, attitude, belief, mind-body connection. Depression has been a huge bane of my existence for most of my life, and dealing with that. So that's something I talk about a lot, and overcoming that. And I actually fairly recently got off of all of my medications, and I'm doing quite well with a new doctor, and a more holistic approach, and a new coach that I have as well. And I have topics on personal power, self-confidence, self-esteem, stress relief, and transformation. I've been putting articles out there for years on it. It's just to share thoughts and writing and around all of that, all of those topics, which I believe are all very, very coexistent.
I know some young people that are great fans of your website.
That's good.
Yes, and coming up through the teenage years there, sometimes this is the kind of thing that needs to be heard early on.
Yeah, well, and also, having been raised with my experience by a really chauvinistic, domineering man, young women suffer the self-esteem, and obviously I can only talk as a woman, but suffer the self-esteem issues very largely. I believe it's also occurs in men as well, but I think it's just more prominent culturally in women. And so, of course, I can address it from a woman's perspective that way. I like it to be for everybody, but there's a lot of things in there that have to do with image and self-worth and self-esteem, and those in those early years. That's extremely important.
Yeah, forming the personality and the strength that goes with that. And here we have also becoming a black belt dreamer.
I developed a number of courses I was working on. I was working towards the speaker aspects. And I was starting out by developing an e-course, and that's a free e-course I have out there for people, where I got into martial arts a long time ago, and it was one of the things that really helped me develop any form of self-confidence. It was so bad I couldn't look people in the eye when I was first back in those days, just so completely out of it. And martial arts helped me overcome a lot of that with the self-confidence, and I ended up developing something which is really a mental martial arts. It's the black belt dreamer refers to getting a black belt in defending your dreams, because the onslaught of negativity coming from the world around you and all the naysaying and the why you can't do that, what do you think, and constantly pushing you back down and making you lose self-belief and just forget your dreams and not able to move forward is devastating. And you really have to build up a self-defense mechanism around that. So I came up with a course, which is a free course out there, 10-week course, that you can sign up by putting your name and email in there, and you just get, every week you'll get one of the lessons around using martial arts techniques to create mental self-defense mechanisms.
Become a black belt dreamer boot camp.
Yeah.
Mastering mental martial arts person, defend your dream. I actually have taken this course and enjoyed it thoroughly, was leaping about and defending myself from naysayers and dream busters.
Well, one of the things, while I was in training, and I've had a few setbacks with some physical injuries and auto accidents and such, but I still eventually will get my real black belt. I got pretty far up. And as I'm getting my health back again with my current doctors and stuff, eventually I'm going to be able to go back to my black belt training for real. One of the things is that the consistency of just constant using that as techniques to constantly realize when you're being assaulted, not just physically but mentally, is important.
Well, that's very subtle, but it's very prevalent and kind of passes for humor, a bit like the cop in the Lalani lanes. Sort of like he's joking, but...
Well, the passive-aggressives are the worst, I think. But you also have the outright aggressives, too.
Uh-huh.
I mean, downright, you can't do that, you're a stupid idiot. You know, all these awful things that are said to you.
Yeah.
You know, to break you down, to control you. And you end up, you know, not living your passion, not living your dream, and not fulfilling who you're meant to be on, you know.
That's right. Not going forward and not reaching... into your own, completely your own generated ideas.
And I would say this the most, and it's a lifelong journey to deal with. Eventually, even if you extricate a lot of those external people from your life and you get to a place where you have healthy friends, you still have to deal with your own internal demons that have been built up over the while, if you want to call them demons, you know, internal voices that are constantly re-echoing the default is what my coach calls it, going back to a default which was plugged into you. And I just decided at some point in my life I was going to choose to train my mind the way I wanted to instead of have it haphazardly trained
right.
and programmed by whoever happened to be around at the time that decided to be a jerk.
And hearing the critic in your inner dialogue,
the
critic all the time, where you can't think in a way that develops your intuition and your new ideas. If someone's imaginary critic is waving his finger at you, his finger.
I don't know if you ever watched the Muppets where they have those two old grouchy men. They're always in the movie theater.
Up in the balcony.
They're always saying something negative all the time. Sometimes it helps to put a humorous face on something, and then you can't take it so seriously. But I always thought that was a good image.
Humor. Oh, that's another topic, isn't it? Humor. How important that is. And your book is full of that. It's full of witty and ironic comments on the adventures you've gone through.
Yeah, well, the writing the book itself was a whole process. Like I said, it took 3 years to, I wrote it and then rewrote the whole thing. So that
3 years and written over twice to change the from the she to the I.
Yeah.
Yes, that's a challenge.
Mm.
Well, if somebody wanted to take that course, then they would
go to lycashan.com, lycashan.com, and on the left-hand side on the main page is what you call an opt-in, where you put your name and email address and click the submit button, and then you would get an email with saying hello and welcome. If you saying if this was you and you wanted to sign up for, please click on this link, and to make sure that you didn't get spammed, it wasn't an accident, and then after that you'd get sent a weekly piece of the course. Ongoing to
anti-dream busting techniques on the web. You heard it here.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, another adventure I have a note on here is a movie, a recently opening movie, Anything But Ordinary.
Yes, that was quite an interesting event. When I lived in Atlanta. No, I'm sorry. I'm trying to think of what year it was.
It was a few years back that he started it, right, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was 4 years ago. I was contacted by Mike McCleary, and I was also involved with a number of people at the Atlanta Speakers Bureau because I started to investigate becoming a speaker. And he was looking for interesting people that had interesting stories that were pursuing living their dreams that he wanted to feature in a documentary-style movie. And he came out and he interviewed me and some of my friends, actually one of my friends, Chris Gloss, who's an awesome speaker as well. And then I kind of forgot about it. It was a wonderful little interview. I remember doing it and enjoying it and talking about success and various topics. And then suddenly, 4 years later, it reemerges and he's actually traveled all over the country and put together the whole movie. He had never done a movie before. This was his dream to do.
Oh, so it's a story on his side too.
Yeah, and I actually ended up interviewing him on Breaking the Limit. So one of the shows on here is Mike McCleary talking about the movie.
In the archive, then. People can hear that.
It's on breakingthelimits.com, and you can listen to that to hear his story around the whole movie. And so that just recently actually came out. It's been in the theaters. He's had traveled around the country showing it in certain theaters for premieres, and pretty soon I'll be getting the actual CD. I ordered some copies of that as well. But it was an interesting experience, but it's quite fun because he ended up going all over the country and talking to a whole bunch of different people, interviewing different speakers and people with interesting stories. And I'm one of the people featured in the movie, so I'm in a movie as myself.
Wonderful.
And it was very interesting, and it's continuing to be because he's going to be basing a book on that as well.
Oh,
so,
I saw the trailer on that movie too, and it looks like such an interesting movie. I think it's going to get a lot of play.
It's anything but ordinary. Is ordinary people living extraordinary lives.
And he has a website of that sort too. Okay, so I think we're coming up on a break here, but anythingbutordinary.com maybe it is?
No, you can go to breakinglimits.com to his episode page and click on there.
Go through the episode page on.
Yeah, and the
Limits.
episode is called Anything But Ordinary. It's episode number 3. So go to Breaking the Limits and you can hear his interview and listen to about the show and get more detail there.
And watch the trailer.
And watch the trailer and click on his link there.
Okay, good enough. All right, we must be about ready to...
No, I'll tell you when I can hear it, when the music starts.
Okay, great. Well, this has been recent appearances, not to mention the national TV Katie Couric show that you got recruited onto about real estate.
Oh, that was just, I was trying to sell my house, and with the economy though I was having trouble, and I ended up doing research and finding a house swap.
House swap?
Doing a house swap, where really I just found somebody that wanted my house and I wanted theirs, and so we bought each other's houses, sans realtor. And then suddenly that became a huge deal. Somebody found out about that we'd done it, and it was the next hot thing. So I ended up with on the news with a
they interviewed
story around.
They
interviewed me in my house, and it was
TV
fun.
crew in your front room.
It was interesting. It was just a little happy skippy, piece on the news. So.
Oh, I think that was a very important aspect at the time.
So now we'll be back after this break.
The World Talk Radio Variety Channel, where the world comes to listen and talk.
Your past does not dictate your future. Learn where this powerful message came from by picking up a copy of the inspirational book, Firewalker, written by author, speaker, and talk show host Lyca Shawn. Firewalker chronicles Lyca's experiences raised in the deep woods of Maine by a Czech immigrant who claimed to be touched by the hand of God, and her journey to overcoming the fear and self-doubt that was thrust upon her for years. Pick up your copy of Firewalker now at breakingthelimits.com/Firewalker. That's breakingthelimits.com/Firewalker. Champions are born and losers are made. This is a powerful statement made by one of the world's top motivational speakers, John D. Lemmy. Clinically diagnosed as a stutterer at a young age, he was told he would never speak fluently, and yet now he is a world-renowned motivational speaker. Get the resources now you need in order to stay on top of your game. John D. Lemmy is giving away for free 7 success motivational teachings. Go to www.selfempowermentsystems.com. That's www.selfempowermentsystems.com.
Ready to revolutionize your thinking? It's time to learn about the clarity, simplicity, and speed of systems thinking and how it can be applied to every aspect of your daily life. Each week, tune in to Steve Haynes Live and learn one systems thinking concept. You'll also learn 3 simple, clear, and integrated applications that you can use instantly. You can apply them to your life, job, family, organization, government, and or society. Steve Haynes Live broadcasts every Tuesday afternoon at 2 p.m. Pacific Time, 5 p.m. Eastern on World Talk Radio Variety Channel. Join Steve, and together we will make a global difference. Listen. The world is talking. The World Talk Radio Variety Channel.
You are listening to Breaking the Limits. Your past does not dictate your future with Lyca Shawn. What would you do if you could overcome any obstacle in your life? Let's get back to today's exciting discussion. Here's Lyca Shawn.
Hey, welcome back to Breaking the Limits, and I am being interviewed by Carol Edson. So, Carol, you had more questions for me?
Yes, well, we were just going over the movie Anything But Ordinary about the topic of what is success, right? What is success?
Well, he had a lot of topics. One of the things he did talk about was what is success. And I actually have a clip from the movie interview on lycashawn.com under interviews.
Oh, so you can see a piece of that movie.
Well, it's just a piece of the interview I did, but he interviewed a variety of different people doing a variety of different things that they love, and it was all based around ordinary people living extraordinary lives. He didn't want to go running around interviewing all these super famous people. He wanted to find people that were regular people that were still also doing extraordinary things.
That's a great theme, I think.
Yeah.
That's what we need to put things into our lives from our inspirations, be able to apply them to our real lives and to see others doing the same. So tell us about how you got the Breaking the Limits show going.
Well, actually, I was contacted by out of the blue, actually, and asked to become a host. They'd done some research on I'm not exactly sure how they. They're not exactly
clear. I bet they saw your stuff online.
They did. They saw some of my stuff online, but they go out and they proactively research to try and find hosts to host shows, and you are then given creative control to go ahead and figure out what you want your show to be around. Of course, be it the topics to be around and the guests you want to bring on and the format, and you run it by them, of course, preliminary to actually going live. And they came and said, would you do a 13-pilot series? And I came up with the topic of breaking the limits, because breaking the limits to me is referring to all those limits that the committee of they put on you. They always have so much to say, about what limits you, what you should and shouldn't be able to do. And I decided I wanted to do a format where I went and I found interesting people to interview that were basically breaking the limits that had been placed on them by other people. And that's how I came up with the theme and the topic.
And the past does not dictate your future.
And, of course, the past does not dictate your future is my underlying theme. And that's usually many of the limits that they put on you have to do with them assuming that you are just a sum total of your past, which is we are a lot more than that. There's a lot more potential.
Well, the creativity, too. The creativity that happens when you let go of old expectations that people put on you and look for what it is.
Well, if you buy into it, it becomes your reality, and if you believe it, then it's so. And you don't limit yourself, and it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So it's about interviewing other people to inspire people. That's, interviewing, inspiring people that are doing amazing things. And it's very similar to kind of what Mike McCleary did, which was to go find inspiring people to interview to inspire the rest of the world. And that's really what it's about.
Bringing the good work to the world.
It is sort of like that.
Yes. Well,
so World Talk Variety Radio found me, basically, and said, hey, would you like to be a host? And I'm like, oh, okay. And then they had me submit my ideas and what I wanted to do with it. They thought that I looked like I'd make an interesting from my interviews that they'd see me on, because if you type Lyca Shawn in Google, it'll pull up all kinds of interviews I've had out there around my book and around the I've been called to do radio interviews on the topic of cult indoctrination, and a number of the articles I'd had out there, and basically I have a pretty big web footprint on a variety of self-empowerment type of works, which comes from my blog and my book. And
so there are more videos of your speaking on which website is that?
No. These are talk show interviews.
Okay, and where are they?
Just Google my name, and I'm scattered all over the place.
I see.
I'm going to consolidate more of them onto my site, but that's how they found me. They came across me.
Oh, I see. So there are interviews about your book.
I was interviewed by a lady called Tammy Fowles about being in a cult. I was interviewed on.
Interesting.
Yeah, I've been in. There's a lot of them out there. Some of them I've forgotten by now. Over the years, I've just had a lot of different things out there, and they're obviously still out there, living in the internet sphere.
Still covering the building of damaged self-esteem and the raising self-esteem to raise the world topics. Those
different topics.
Yes.
Depends on what they wanted to talk about at the time, yeah.
Uh-huh. And what are you thinking of, what's coming up next for you?
I am looking towards expanding my speaker dream. I'd like to become much more of a self-empowerment speaker. I would like to. I'm looking into some more training on that. I never really had any formal training around it. I just always felt like that was something I was drawn towards. Mm-hmm. So I'm looking at a course that my current coach has, which would be something of great interest to me. And I just want to step into growing out into that phase of this whole firewalk, really.
And part of that is the black belt dreamer concept, isn't it?
Yeah, that's continuing with it. How I with Firewalker Enterprises, and all of this really fits into the same theme: the Breaking the Limits, the Firewalker Enterprises, the book Firewalker. Speaking, it's all around the same concept, which is breaking the limits, not being restricted by other people's belief systems that they impose on you, not being restricted by just because you were thrown into a situation when you didn't have control over it, letting that control the rest of your life. Changing, looking at ways to just become who you're meant to be. And it's all around the same theme, basically. It's just different medium. And so I'm basically coming to a point where it's kind of starting to really tie together, where I'm going to come out, and I believe my next phase is really going to be geared towards speaking.
And speaking on really finding one's own creative flow through these techniques and through the telling one's own story, one's own way, and all the other lovely topics that are on your lycashawn.com website. And we were talking recently about right intention on the road to success. Want to tell us a little bit about that?
Remind me? What do you mean, right?
Well, bringing the right intention to your work for success to be meaningful. I think John Delemny had...
Oh, you're talking... Well, John Delemny is my coach, and he's awesome, and he's been helping rein in my over-aggressive overachiever in the respect that I tend to jump the gun and rush ahead 1,000 miles a minute, and really he talks about growing your roots and really building a foundation on a day-to-day basis with small, consistent steps, and every day. And that, at first, that was a little alien to me because I'm someone that just, that I multitask like crazy, and I run 1,000 miles a minute, and I'm always doing 6 million things.
Leaps and bounds.
So it's been very, very interesting, and I guess we're
about ready for give her a close. And thank you, everyone.
Thank you for interviewing me on my show.
Yes, and I hope everyone will come back next week and hear more with the next guest.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks again for tuning in to Breaking the Limits. Please join Lyca Shawn for another program of inspiration next Friday at 4 p.m. Pacific Time, 7 Eastern on the World Talk Radio Variety Channel. This week, never let what's happened in the past dictate what happens in your future.
Thanks again for listening to the preceding program brought to you on the World Talk Radio Network. For more information about our network and to check out additional show hosts and topics of interest, please visit worldtalkradio.com. The World Talk Radio Network, where the world comes to talk. The views and ideas expressed on the preceding program are strictly those of the host or guests and do not necessarily reflect the views and ideas held by the World Talk Radio Network, its staff, and management.